After years serving as Hillary Clinton's Secret Service detail, Dan Bongino thought he'd seen the worst of DC corruption. But, as FBI Deputy Director, he's realised that was just the surface. What he's uncovered since joining the Bureau's top ranks has shaken him to the core, and the layers of cover-up have left him physically sick. As Dan puts it, if you're begging the government for the truth, you're already playing their game. You want answers? Do your own digging. Now, Dan's team has gone rogue, leaking explosive evidence. Classified files, tying over half of Congress to elite-run blackmail networks, including the buried Epstein files they never wanted you to see. These files are not coming through Freedom of Information Act requests. They're surfacing on the dark web. And they're so devastating, they could bring down the entire US government. Dan poses the question the elites fear most. If the system is built on unspeakable evil, the kind that makes you sick to your stomach, then what exactly are we trying to preserve? Government has long been a playground for secret societies and shadowy elites. Beneath the polished speeches and flag-waving lies a darker truth. Blackmailed politicians, controlled by hidden hands, have staged election after election. A rigged game where both sides answer to the same masters. Take the 2004 presidential race. On the surface, it was Bush versus Kerry. But behind closed doors, both were members of Skull and Bones, the elite Ivy League's most notorious secret society. Opponents in public, Bonesman brothers in private. The illusion of choice was just that, an illusion. What Dan Bongino has uncovered at the FBI proves it wasn't just Skull and Bones, Bohemian Grove, or the WEF. It was the blueprint. Those same networks of secrecy, blackmail and loyalty to unseen masters still pull the strings in DC. But the deeper Dan dug, the clearer it became. The rituals have grown darker, the depravity more brazen, and the cost of silence higher than ever.
George Bush's family is full of Skull and Bones men, including his dad, George Herbert Walker, and his grandfather, Prescott. W. Bush also appointed 10 members of the elite clique to his administration. And check out how Kerry and Bush both responded when asked about the secret society in which they are brothers by the late Tim Russert of Meet the Press.
You both were members of Skull and Bones, a secret society at Yale. What does that tell us?
Not much, because it's a secret.
Is there a secret handshake? Is there a secret code?
I wish there were something secret I could manifest.
322, a secret number?
There are all kinds of secrets, Tim.
You were both in Skull and Bones, the secret society.
It's so secret we can't talk about it.
What does that mean for America? The conspiracy theorists are going to go wild.
I'm sure they are. I don't know. I haven't seen the web.
Number 322.
As unsettling as Bush's and Kerry's dodgy responses were, what's even more disturbing are the rituals they took part in behind closed doors of Skull and Bones. Ceremonies so bizarre and secretive, you have to ask, what kind of power demands that kind of loyalty?
According to the Scotsman, a Scottish newspaper, initiates must masturbate in a coffin while recounting their sexual exploits, for which they will be rewarded with a no-strings-attached gift of $15,000. Wow, masturbating in a coffin must have been pretty awkward for Bush if his dad was present. Although little else is known about what goes on inside the tomb, it's widely reported that members, including George W.'s grandpappy, grave robbed the famous Native American Apache leader Geronimo, taking his skull and some of his bones. As if the Trail of Tears and genocide of Native Americans wasn't offensive enough, these rich mofos actually have bragged about desecrating his grave and doing God knows what with his skull. Vile. Sadly, the descendants of Geronimo have been trying to get his remains back for years and have actually filed a lawsuit against Skull and Bones on the 100th anniversary of his death. But the appeal fell on deaf ears and Skull and Bones came out victorious. According to Yale Daily News, officials cannot be forced to permit Geronimo's descendants to remove his remains and relocate them, because apparently it's perfectly okay to steal dead bodies as long as you never give them back. This type of behavior is actually indicative of the way the uber elite view the rest of us peons and their role in society. Because hoarding the world's wealth and controlling the political process just isn't enough unless you can brag about it to your naked coffin buddies.
Gaining entry into the world's most elite inner circles has never been about merit. It's about submission. Ritual, humiliation, twisted oaths, and moral compromise are the price of admission. Because once they own your shame, they own you.
You've said that both George W. Bush and his father had anal sex with 100 men. How do you know that?
because they are part of the well-known fraternal group out of Yale University known as Skull and Bones. And it's public knowledge that the Skull and Bones organization, in order to be initiated, first of all, you had to lie in a casket and let men urinate on you. And then a part of the process, you had to stand in a circular, if you will, masturbation squad to be a part of Skull and Bones. And then you also had to be penetrated by the elder persons in Skull and Bones. Everybody knows this as public knowledge. And George Bush Sr. and George Bush Jr. are bona fide members of Skull and Bones. That means they have been penetrated by at least 100 men in their anus area.
And how do you know that it's 100? Might it have been 95?
Yeah, well, it could have been less, but generally that's the number that kind of gets the attention of everybody.
And if it could have been fewer, it could have been none also, right?
No, it could not have been none. It could not have been none, no. And because Skull and Bones will not accept you without that practice. It's hideous, but that's what they do. That's what these fraternities do. Some do even worse than that.
Since stepping into the FBI's inner sanctum, Dan Bongino has seen firsthand that the corruption of the elite isn't just persistent, it's escalating. The depravity required to control today's power players makes past scandals look almost tame. We're no longer talking about crimes against humanity of the kind Bush and Kerry were involved in during their time in power. We're talking about crimes against children, the kind so dark, so vile, they defy comprehension. This isn't politics as usual, this is blackmail built on pure evil. And after the break, we're going to show you proof. But be warned, remember those white envelopes handed to select presidents and their wives at George Bush Sr.'s funeral? It wasn't part of a ceremony, it was meant for the public. It was a message delivered in broad daylight, but meant only for those who knew exactly what it meant. Michelle Obama and Hillary Clinton's reactions said everything. Jeb Bush's face went pale. His parents looked stone cold, not with grief, but recognition. The envelopes were a reminder to the inner circle, you're still owned, and don't forget who's really in control. According to Dan Bongino and his team, Hillary Clinton's skeletons aren't just in the closet, they're rattling loud enough for the world to hear. And Dan Bongino says it's time for the public to finally learn the truth. He didn't hear rumours, he didn't read headlines. He was there. As part of her Secret Service detail, he saw behind the polished speeches and pantsuits. And what he witnessed made it clear that this isn't just a corrupt politician, this is an evil human being. Bongino went on record saying, "I worked with Hillary Clinton. She was evil. The stories agents around her have, and have kept bottled up inside, are horrendous." Sound familiar? He continued, "Working on her detail was generally considered a punishment assignment. You'll never meet a more mercenary and destructive public figure in your lifetime. She hates you, all of you."
I found Mrs. Clinton to be the most deceptive human being, manipulative political person in a position of power I'd ever met in my entire life. It wasn't so much that she was a liar. It was that she did it and she deceived and manipulated with such ease.
After serving as deputy director of the FBI, Dan Bongino's perspective shifted completely. Hillary Clinton isn't just corrupt, she's something else entirely. Something beyond the pale. But it doesn't stop with her. According to Bongino, more than half of Congress is compromised, caught in blackmail rings, buried in the darkest of secrets, controlled by forces far above their pay grade, whether it's global elites, foreign powers, or their unseen puppet masters. Their past atrocities keep them in line, and in Hillary's case, her atrocities are darker than most. According to multiple whistleblowers, including Kathy O'Brien, Hillary is a violent lesbian paedophile who enjoys hunting for sport. And we're not talking about deer or elk.
So at the hunting parties, they would they'd have all these expendable children outside in the woods, and usually they have holding grounds, like a tunnel system or something underground where they hold the kids in cages until the time of the hunt. And the hunt usually happens later, once it's dark outside. And so what they'll do is they kind of they'll kind of make a perimeter, which is pretty large, of these woods, and they'll station the different elite people around the perimeter. And then when they give the go, they release the kids, and the kids are told just to run, to hide. And that's when the elite will go through the woods and start hunting for them. When they catch them, a lot of times they will first sexually abuse them, and then they'll kill them. So not everybody will get killed in that situation. If they don't, then they're used for other hunts. But, there were kids that I saw who, were really good survivors, and they would just continuously have to relive this trauma, So there was kind of so those were the kids on the outside, and then because we were hierarchy kids, we were on the inside. And so on the inside, usually in the house or the lodge, you would have the older men who were too old. Sometimes it did include women, but they were too old to be out in the woods hunting for the kids. So they brought everything indoors for those individuals. And those individuals were not allowed to kill, but they were allowed to capture and rape the hierarchy children. So, once the signal was given that the hunt was on, you were just trying to escape, hide, and not be found. And sometimes they would make it seem, for the kids, like it was a hide and seek game. So unless you got caught, you really didn't know what happened.
As shocking as these allegations may sound, they aren't new. The warning signs have been there for decades. On August the 3rd, 1977, Kathy O'Brien stood before the 95th US Congress and delivered a testimony that has since been buried, discredited, and ignored by the mainstream media. She claimed she had been a government-sponsored sex slave and accused Hillary Clinton of rape. She named both Hillary and Bill as bisexual predators deeply embedded in an elite trafficking ring. One involved not just in abuse, but in buying, selling, and even ritual sacrifice of children. The media called it madness, a conspiracy, a lie. But now, nearly 30 years later, the truth is clawing its way to the surface, and the cracks in the cover-up are impossible to ignore. The crimes of the elite are no longer hidden, and the media can't protect them forever. And the public is finally starting to ask the right questions.
That certainly wasn't the only time I saw Bill Clinton using cocaine. My sexual experience with Bill Clinton was extremely limited, in spite of the fact that I was a sex slave. It was my experience that Bill Clinton is bisexual, leaning far more towards the homosexual end. All I've ever seen him involved in was the homosexual activity, with very limited experience with him myself. Whereas my experience was much more prevalent with Hillary Clinton, because Hillary is also bisexual, leaning more towards the homosexual end, and it was she who accessed my sex programming to fulfill her perversions. People have all kinds of belief systems, and I'm sure each and every one of you has various and different belief systems as well. Regardless of what your belief system is, it is imperative that you know that these criminals are people. They are within our realm to affect. They need to be held accountable for their actions and their crimes against humanity.
With people like Dan Bongino now inside the halls of power, we may finally have a fighting chance. He might be legally restricted from saying everything outright, but make no mistake, the work is happening behind the scenes. The days of the elite committing unspeakable crimes with impunity are coming to an end. And for those willing to dig, the truth is out there. No more excuses. The real information is finally within reach. Here at The People's Voice, we're determined to continue exposing the elite, but we need your help.